as this one is a cooperative dungeon crawler that's coming from the same creators that brought us Arena the Contest, as well as Tenaris Adventures, and these are both very well-regarded games. But unlike those two games, which were very similar to each other and used a lot of the same core mechanisms, Odalin Dungeons of Doom is going in a very different direction. I think this one should have less content than those previous games, which had quite a lot of content, and I think this one will have a more digestible rule set as well. But this one is a campaign game that does have an overarching story, where the results of that story will change depending on the player's decisions and successes and failures. But one thing I really do like about the way that they describe the decisions in this game is that it seems like the game's going to be rewarding you no matter which decisions you make, no matter how morally right or wrong they might be. It says here that you'll be able to save NPCs and gain allies and potentially get new quests from them, but you can also choose to ignore their requests and focus on your own goals, or even just choose to take their lives and use their possessions as your own. There will be some negative consequences along with the good, but it does seem like this is going to be balanced no matter which decisions you make, and the impact of your decisions are more going to be tailored to the way that you want to play the game, and they're going to have a bigger effect on how the actual storyline plays out. And from a gameplay perspective, anything goes. But another really neat aspect of this game is the way that the players build up their characters, because this is a game that does use a little bit of card crafting, and the way that this is all incorporated into the game is that each player is both going to be choosing a hero that they want to play as, but then you're also going to be able to choose a demon to make a pact with, and at the start of the game, both your hero and the demon will have 10 starter cards that you're going to have to mix together to form your initial deck of action cards. You'll be combining these using the sleeves provided with the game, but it'll be up to you to decide which two actions that you want to pair together. Another mechanism that I really like in this game is that players are going to have a track that they're going to be using to manage their order or chaos, and being too far in one direction or the other is going to be granting you with some negative consequences. The actions that players choose as well as the enemies they defeat could impact this, because some of the enemies can grant you with corruption, while other enemies can grant you with their souls. And players do start the game as their human form, but your goal here is to transform into your demon, because that's going to be granting you with much more powerful actions. But in order to turn into your demon and still maintain control of the demon, you need to spend both 5 souls and 5 corruption. And I also love this part of the game as well because it introduces a push your luck mechanism, because the higher your corruption is when you do this, the more powerful your demon form will be. The problem here is that if your corruption reaches its maximum amount, then you're going to be automatically turning into your demon form and losing control of that demon, attacking anything in your way, including your fellow players. This is a game where players are going to be moving through the dungeon using their action cards in order to take their various actions. Every game you play will be different from any previous games, even if you do play the same scenario over again, because the dungeon does introduce its own variability as you're drawing the dungeon cards, and then that card determining which tile is going to be added to that dungeon. The game alternates between the player's phase and the enemy's phase, with players choosing an action card from their hand in order to do different things like move around on the board, attack enemies, and try to accomplish their goals of that specific scenario. Combat in this game is resolved using dice rolling, and there are a few different types of dice that you can gain access to depending on your items and gear. And of course, you can use your abilities and different actions in order to gain additional dice, or even augment or modify the outcome of those rolls. Both the attacker and defender are going to be rolling for their attack and defense values, and then you're going to be comparing the results of those to determine how successful the attack was. Each of the enemies will also have their own attack deck, and during the enemy's phase, you're going to be drawing a card from each of the enemy's deck, and then resolving the effects of that card. Rounds continue like this until one of the endgame conditions are met for that scenario, and then players will be able to move into the next chapter of the campaign. But one thing to note about this game is that in between the scenarios, you'll actually have some opportunities to visit different camps, and at these camps, players will be able to upgrade their characters using the different items and resources that they found during the previous scenario. This is one of the main ways that players will be able to modify their deck as they play through the overarching campaign, but if this one does sound interesting to you, definitely go ahead and check it out, and I will have a link to the campaign in the description down below.